All
I
right.
am ready.
All right. I'm going to start recording now. And starting. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to E6. We have some amazing content coming up and right now, and some special guests for our special FGC panel. Joined by us, me and TJ here. You guys know TJ Dinger. And we have Alex Jebailey here in, digital studio, I guess you could say. And of course, Rick TheHadou as well, who is also here to join us. You may know him as currently putting together a major tournament called Evo. And he also had recently Combo Breaker, which just ended a few weeks ago. And Jebailey, of course, is known around the FGC for various reasons, and has a pretty epic background there with plenty of goodies.
And I
But we
just ran an event last weekend in Dallas, Texas.
Nice.
Yes, he's also killing it, and also didn't you win Super Turbo? I think recently, or you were putting in
I
work.
got top 8 medal.
Yeah,
I'm actually excited for Christmas now. I have like 10 ornaments from various tournaments to put up, so I look forward to that.
nice. Plenty of gold to rack up there. But it's good to have you all. How you both doing?
Doing well.
Also, well, deadlines, pressure. I know Rick, coming off a Combo Breaker, I was there to help out as a friend and enjoy it. And there's no stop for us. Like COVID, after all these years, we're like just jumping right back into it. So he's working on Evo in a month and a half. I've got CEO in 2 weeks. So this is like my deadline week to pretty much order everything. And the team I have put together after all these years and Rick's help and I have Puna designing a bunch of stuff. Tongs working on all our layouts and overlays. So it's a pretty hectic week, but always happy to talk about the community and hang out with everyone that loves gaming. Because today was a pretty good day for Summer Games Fest.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. With this being pre-recorded, I guess most people will probably have seen most of Summer Games Fest by now. But there was some awesome hype, trailers and other events that were going down, including some Street Fighter 6 and such. But yes, CEO is coming up, and of course Evo. I'd say Combo Breaker, Evo, and then CEO. Some solid 1-2 punches in the FGC scene for putting on some high quality events. But can you tell us a bit about how difficult it's been coming out of somewhat of the pandemic, putting on these things again? After a couple of years now of trying to make things work in different ways, either digital formats or in other scenarios.
Yeah, I can kind of kick that off. I did CO back in December, right after Omicron had kind of made its way through everything, and had to go through a lot of cancellations, obviously after Delta in August, leading up to it, and it's kind of crazy to think that last June, when I launched registration for last December's event, we sold like 4,000 tickets within 20 hours because everyone thought we were getting out of this thing, vaccinations are out, and then that just went right back down and kind of still scared people off. But fortunately, December, a lot of pressure on that event that kind of helps me towards this year. And then I know Rick's, you can kind of talk about coming back with Combo Breaker, but on my end, everything's changed. It's not as easy as before. You have to be more understanding as a TO that people are going to back out from the travel costs, the inflation. But the quality of our events and how we run them and the staff is there. It's just the prices of everything have pretty much gone up and made it almost harder than ever. And I know once we're all completely clear of the past couple years that we're going to be booming again. So
I think operating events in a pandemic environment is exceptionally challenging, not just because of the cost increases that Alex is mentioning, but it has been a long time since people have been going to events regularly, but more importantly, it's been a long time since staff have been operating events. And creating those experiences is something that, particularly with an ecosystem that's largely run on volunteer labor, if you are not getting in repetitions of running events regularly, everything from your ability to yell out somebody's name at the front side of a pool for 8 hours straight, to having the patience and the empathy to deal with situations as they arise, since everyone is trying to, in theory, have the same good time, all of those necessities have kind of taken a step back. It's easier to miss the mark. It's easier to forget how to manage expectations successfully. It's harder to remember when not to speak. And as everybody gets the reps in to kind of get their internalized experiences back up, I think it's going to be a bumpy couple of events as we get back into gear. The cool part, though, is everybody is actually approaching events with almost a fresh perspective. We all remember what we used to do, but what we're doing now is not that. And so you get to build off of what is the old understandings or the nostalgia to put together something that is a better experience for here and now. So I'm really excited to see what happens as we get down the line of 5, 6 more events and what that's going to produce for the community. Because I think it will be significantly better than what was available before we all took this multi-year hiatus.
Yeah, and to kind of add to that, like coming back, it gave us a lot of time last year as to how to try to make things even easier and more organized as well. So that kind of break made us reset in our minds, like, all right, so what brings a good event? We have these challenges, right? But at the core, we want the best experience possible. And we kind of, I think what makes me and Rick over the years just get better is we always listen to the feedback and try to improve. And we had a lot of time to kind of look at the shift in momentum of new attendees, new players coming in to kind of understand what their new perspectives was to bringing back events and stuff. And I think that kind of helped. The break was, it was the first year was miserable for me personally because I had just come off of 2019 where I did events in like 6 different countries and nonstop travel. And now I look back after 2 years at home, like how the hell did I live through all that, and now it's kind of just thinking about how we can do things easier and better on the back end so that executing the events in the end will be a lot more enjoyable for everyone else involved.
And you talk about like of course, like inflation has brought the price of everything up, but like we're not just talking about inflation here either in this day and age, like especially now. We're also talking about like you have to staff up to have people check vax cards at the door and stuff like that, right? Like what has it been like developing that process for events and preparing to like help keep people safe in them as much as possible?
I don't think that process is necessarily different. It's still just finding people to execute against a need to best serve the attendee base. The challenge is that there are a lot of needs arising where there isn't a precedent for it in our community. So there isn't the ability to sit down and know up front, this is what this is going to take. This is what this is going to cost. This is what the reaction will be. And that's why, again, as I mentioned a minute ago, I think it's just going to take reps to get everybody up to where they need to be for that awareness level and that execution level.
Yeah, and yep, just manpower. At the end of the day, when you're prepared with as much manpower as possible to kind of run things and give those dedicated roles to your staff to handle things. So, for example, like December when we ran it, I had GOTE. It's a charity event out of Tampa, Florida, and he was just on it with vaccinations, kind of just getting everyone prepared and just having the clear rules out there. There are other ways to do stuff, with apps and everything that could cost a fortune for your event, but it's just extra steps that we've kind of learned and dealing with. But fortunately, with the FGC, that most of them are out there to protect each other, and I think a lot less, there's kickback on Twitter, right? Like, I don't want to wear a mask, everything else is open and stuff. But when it comes to the event, everyone just follows the rules that you lay out for them and kind of help each other out. And I noticed that, at CEO for the most part, and then going to Combo Breaker, how well they were checking on everything was, it's a good feeling when everyone works together. And the one thing I'm seeing is a lot of events kind of changing their rules after registrations open. And, on my end and Rick's end, it's like it'd be unfair for people to plan ahead with what they at the time register for to kind of just stick through that, just to get us through this year at least and hope that things get easier for everybody because we want everyone to come. We don't want any divide on who's wearing what and vaccinations and all that. So definitely a learning process that is not so much getting easier, but we just understand it better now. And it's great to see all these other events doing it and learning what works, what doesn't, and such.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Having gone to Combo Breaker this year, it seemed like there was a lot more ease for some people. I know I've gotten some anxiety about going back out there in situations where people may not have plans for either vaccination or masks and those kind of things. And this was a smooth experience. I've also volunteered for Combo Breaker in previous years, and I've heard good things from the staff as far as like how things have gone more recently. And I know that's definitely a lot to take on moving back into things here now. But yeah, as Rick said, being able to adjust over the next few events, I think it's definitely a growing process. Jebailey, I know you mentioned just a minute ago getting feedback from the community and such. I know that's always been a big part with kind of that communication happening back and forth, both with when it comes to either game related content or just in general the tournaments and layouts. But since the panel itself is about the FGC as a whole, how do you guys kind of approach community feedback? You know, either after an event or if there's some feedback or criticism about, say, how a particular tourney was ran or a character or something like that might be an issue. How do you guys go about kind of fleshing that out and also finding an even ground for both the community and tournament?
Well, the secret to keep your sanity is don't read Twitter. No, very fortunate actually. I was community manager on Killer Instincts with Iron Galaxy, and I was taught by Dave Lang and the staff to, kind of look for those continuous, repetitive, not repetitive, but the repeated comments to kind of get like a majority of that, and then kind of attack that first and try to fix those situations. See, over the years, me and Rick, we care deeply about what everyone thinks and want to provide the best experiences possible. Me personally, it's like, if it's something I can fix, our jobs as TOs at the end of the day is to put out every fire possible as the event was happening. I mean, me and Rick have been through some crazy stuff over the years. I can tell you that without telling you that. And, it's just kind of learning what you can fix, what's in your control. Like, for example, to be very upfront, like Daytona Beach, amazing venue. I've always had complaints about the surrounding areas and stuff. And my goal is to just focus on what I can control and also give my feedback of the community as a whole to other people involved with the city, stuff like that. But at the end of the day, we try to fix what we can. When it comes to gameplay stuff, it's a overwhelming majority. I'll give an example. And Rick can speak to this on a character, a lab coat in Dragon Ball, right?
Oh, yeah.
I went asking around. I know Rick asked around and stuff, and just it was more of a logistical thing with this character when you have people winning with her going, yeah, this character's bad right now. And it's one of those things where we hate banning characters. You want to let it rock as much as possible. But when an overwhelming majority is telling, like, dude, she's adding 2 hours to our tournaments on weekday nights, and everyone picks her and stuff. And of course, Rick has to do his event. I'm about to do mine and I ban her. He does not. And then a patch comes out anyways and just wipes it clean, after my event. So at the end of the day, you just got to listen to what you see the most of feedback wise. The good stuff does help us get through it. They always say being a TO is the thankless job, but for every 10 really negative comments you might get, there's 100 positives out there that kind of keep you going and stuff. And if it's in your control, learn how to fix it, talk to other people with experience. If it's out of your control, try what your best. It's either just let people know why it doesn't work and be honest. And if that transparency doesn't work, then just go back to trying to fix what you can.
Great experiences root from refinement. Refinement is built out of feedback. There is a ton of feedback that's going to be actionable. There's a ton of feedback that is not actionable. One of the most important things that any organizer can do is sift through the feedback, figure out what you can do, figure out what feedback is the most repetitious, which is something that Alex just called out, and execute against that. Time is limited, resources are limited, but the experience that you produce is going to be best when the time available and the resources available target the things that the attendees want to see most improved, most changed, or most experimented with. And the experimented with is one of the most important parts. You can't find a perfect product, but you can't step closer to one without experimenting with the product you have. And events are products. So that's kind of where I stand on it.
I think
dropping the keys there. Yeah,
you brought up.
But yeah, you should have banned lab coat.
I actually want to dig deeper into that because it's such an interesting conversation. Like how there are so few times throughout fighting game history where a character was just outright banned off the table. No one can touch that character. It's kind of a devastating precedent to set for a lot of people because you have those people that obviously like gravitate towards the top tier. They know that character is good. They're gonna try to use that character, and then like that practice just goes out the window. But at the same time, fighting games have also changed nowadays too. Like we have balance patches now. Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is always going to be the same game, and like those top tiers are always going to be those top tiers because they're not going to update that game. But like Guilty Gear Strive has a patch coming out in the next
Tomorrow.
day, and then we could see Dragon Ball Fighter Z drop a patch or even a hot fix soon. And like, how do you operate around a this sort of era where balance patches are more of a thing.
Yeah, obviously it's a timing thing at the end of the day. And I think the lab coat precedent, it was a lot easier to kind of make the decision I made because she's only been out for a few months and it's not like she's been in Dragon Ball Fighters since day one and it's ruining somebody. Like all these players that are still playing Dragon Ball, which is, I got to say it's still doing very well number-wise at my event, Rick's event. It's carried on for a couple years now. I think my event pre-co is one of the last ones that had it as one of their tour stops in CO 2019, I think, Rick. And, that kind of support. And a lot of us, we don't talk about, we never will, but like we kind of get to chat with the developers. We don't know everything. They might hint to us like the timing of something, but we will never know for sure. At the end of the day, we're still fans. Like Guile, I didn't know they're going to release a trailer for Guile today, for example, right? But a character like that, it was just one of those things where the feedback and the experience of her at Combo Breaker kind of made the decision easier for me to kind of reach out to players like, all right, this is what happened. There were 7 of her in top 8, like 19 out of top 24, which goes, not that she's broken, but if you can't win without her as a character, right? There's no easy counter. And when you don't have a counter to a character like that, you got to do what you got to do in the timing of when your event is. And then, yeah, it is amazing that there is better feedback to the developers to fix this kind of stuff. And they're paying attention better than ever. Like, growing up in the 90s, me and Rick, arcade babies, Mortal Kombat 2 had like a revision, but you didn't know what it was in it. You figured it out, right? Now, Ed Boon is every day on Twitter and like, all right, there's something wrong. And I'll give you a funny story that I haven't really talked in detail, but Mortal Kombat 9 or 10, I think it was X, Rick, with Tanya at CEO.
Oh,
and this is actually what changed the rule for a lot of our events to give it like a couple weeks at least of a character to be out in case of this stuff. And I'll never forget, the crowd was counting every time she did an EX teleport drill, and we got up to like 70. Well, I've got Ed Boon in the background talking to his team, like, what the hell is this guy? I'll never forget that story, or just seeing that. And that was where I was like, all right, this kind of, it's great that we're getting new characters. Killer Instinct paved the way with the piecemeal living characters, and now we're getting that with DLC. So, but to shorten that answer, is it's amazing that the developers are continuously updating their game now and helping it out. And then you have the old school heads that are like, I hate patches. They should just leave it broken forever. But you're in a world where people want instant, a new feeling every day, something instant. We're kind of all spoiled in every aspects of our life in that regard. So, just experience of the timing of it and what you can do and what might not be coming out in time for your event.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. But yeah, so I wanted to take a moment here to kind of ask you guys a bit about more of the history for both of you in the community, for those that may not be as familiar with you. I wanted to see if you guys wouldn't mind kind of telling us a bit about how you kind of got into both fighting games and then moving on to when actually run events.
If I could do a documentary on that, I'll let Rick start that one out.
I played fighting games a bit when I was young, but important for me is when Street Fighter 4 came out, it was a game I could beat my brother in. And I don't know if either of you have siblings, but the ability to beat your sibling in a game makes that game extremely important.
Oh, yes.
That led to me going to a local tournament, went with friends, went with my girlfriend, got destroyed. That did terrible things to my ego, so then I had to play the game competitively. Got sucked into playing the game as competitively as often as I could, and quickly discovered that thanks to a new job, I couldn't go to locals anymore. And so still wanting to actually compete regularly, I started hosting a local in my garage. That got too large to host in my garage, and destroyed a toilet in the process. So wound up finding a local venue that we could start running monthly out of. That led us to a comic shop we were running a monthly out of. That led me to an event called Focus Fire that was in La Crosse, Wisconsin. It was run by Evan Maw and the Gaming Generations crew. I met Keats there. That led me down to Chicago for the UFGT series. Met Alex at that series. Along the way, started working as many helpful positions throughout those events as I could. Did brackets, did graphics, did stage manager stuff, did hosting. That led to when Keats decided to retire his series in Chicago. Somebody had to try to fill that void. I was not terribly interested in filling that void because Alex and I were working at CEO at the time, and it was going well enough that one event a year seemed just fine. But the majority of my friends in Minnesota weren't interested in driving down to Florida. That takes a while. So that led to Combo Breaker getting started with Curly W, a couple of members of the Gaming Gen crew. And that has continued to spin out exponentially to the events that I'm working on today.
Yeah, and since I was 8 years old, I can remember playing fighting games. I had two older brothers that would pick up, Nintendo, and just would go to the arcades in the 90s. And then the story I always have to tell is I won the very first ever Blockbuster video game championship that Dr. Disrespect claims to win. And one of the games was Street Fighter II Turbo on Super Nintendo. And my fondest memory was my brothers had bought it before that tournament was happening. And I would play it every day with my brothers. I would learn from them. And this is like, early 90s. So there's no Twitter forums or Discords or Facebook chats. So I would use my brother's prodigy.net to dial up and get the codes for Mortal Kombat. And I would hustle. I'd go to the arcades, use my sister's word processor with 1 megabit of memory. God, I'm freaking old. 1 megabit of memory, and type up over and over again without saving it how to do all the fatalities that I would get from like AOL and prodigy.net, and go sell them for like $5 just to get tokens to the arcades. And would go to the arcades with my I'm sorry, yeah. And I'd go with my sister and mom. They draw me off at the arcade with like $2, and I just learned how to play fighting games at an arcade. And then getting into the FGC, technically, I didn't really get into it until CVS2 back in like 2001, when my college, UCF in Florida, had a CVS2 cabinet in the student union called Wackadoos. And within a couple of weeks of learning the game with some mentors, Alex Navarro, old school, Trent Van Devin. He was at the very first ever GameStop Street Fighter 4 finals that Daigo had won in Vegas. And just playing with them and learning and going to a heck of a lot of tournaments. And the first tournament I ever ran, I was 13 years old on my birthday. Street Fighter 2 New Challengers had a tournament mode on the Super Nintendo. And I would keep running that 8-man bracket with all my cousins and friends. And that's where I kind of like, dude, I love this camaraderie and playing with people, but also organizing these tournaments. And there's a video I should link to you guys to share, where 20 years later, someone had found the original Blockbuster Video Game Championship finale recap I never knew existed because I was 11 years old at the time. And in it, it started off with a 2-minute montage of the president of Blockbuster at the time going, "This is for the future stores to run a fight or a tournament. Please watch this video to give you an understanding." And I was like, dude, this is like the earliest footage of esports back like around Nintendo. So been around a while. And then just over the years, just met so many of my best friends, playing fighting games. And I graduated college. I stopped. I switched over to card games like Versus System. And I switched over to DDR. I was playing heavy DDR. And then Street Fighter 4, man, when that came back, literally went on the SRK Atlantic South Region Forum. And I have never seen a more let's get the band back together moment than, hey, let's all do locals again. And then I started running tournaments in 2008 at bars, Hooters, pop-up college bars. And then CO 2010 was born. Met Rick, I think 2011 we had met. We've talked, I would say, nearly almost every day since that, then, just about how to refine everything and work together. And Street Fighter 4, I always tell people, CVS2, if it wasn't for that game and my experience and winning a lot back then, CEO would not exist. I would not be in this interview right now. And then Street Fighter 4 is what really built CEO to where it is, and getting everyone back together. And I've always had fun being an organizer. I still do. Even after the 2-year break to think about it, I'm like, I have the right people on my side now and all that. And so just always an arcade baby growing up that just was a natural talent to play games and learn. And a lot of people in the new generation, they don't kind of have that experience that we do from the arcades where you had to put a quarter up every time you wanted to play, right? But there's still, I'm excited for the next generation of players and the tournament organizers coming up. But yeah, kind of got into that. And Rick and I have talked since then. And the early days, I always say, like, me and Rick were, 2012 with Keats, and Keats was a huge mentor of mine. And I would go to all the UFGTs. I'm like, dude, 10 years from now, we're going to be running the best events in the world. And now he's in charge of Evo, running all the DreamHack fighting games. And we kind of called it, and it's been awesome. So.
Yeah, quite the track record for sure. I remember the UFGTs and then transition to Combo Breaker and such, and making some new friends there at the events and those kind of things. Do you guys have any advice for newcomers who are coming into the scene? I've seen a lot of people who have kind of gotten into fighting games over the past 2 years, and have been kind of thirsty for in-person events now that they've kind of gotten into them. Both in I have some friends in both the Tekken scene and Mortal Kombat scene who never actually met in person up until Combo Breaker, and now more of their friends are coming out and trying to get more involved. But do you guys have any advice for kind of like bridging that gap? If you're coming from the online scene and then trying to move into being part of the competitive scene in person?
Rick, you may proceed.
I think anybody going to an event, the two most important things I can think of, aside from some basics like drink water, be open to losing. Be open to talking to other players that you don't know, because it's very easy to go to an event and just wind up in the corner or wind up watching. Go to an event with the purpose of either trying to find friends or rivals. That's the best thing you can do with your time at an event if you're coming off of offline, because you're looking for people that you can play with regularly, talk to regularly, compete with purposefully. Training partners aren't found alone. It takes effort to actually find the ones that are going to be worthwhile for you.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, same thing. Pre-COVID, you would go to like Capcom Pro Tour. I think his name was Kuma or something, and Cross Tekken, and he would be the only one that was like, "That's an online warrior." You would pick them out. Now everyone's just kind of like in a fresh start, and over COVID, a lot of the top players, the Justin Wongs, the Punks, they became content creators. So I don't think now is as important to have those players mentioned, right? Like, CO 2012, for example. 2011 was just run a good event for Florida. 2012 was like, I really want to get Daigo out to this event, right? And that was like a marketing tool to get players out.
Yeah.
Now there's just everyone's so much more aware of all the best players in the world from all over that it's even easier to find new top players and kind of interact. But it's those moments that, I'll be stressed out to an event, and as soon as the event's happening, everyone's like, dude, I saw somebody I haven't seen in 2 years. This is the greatest weekend of my life. And, that kind of gets you through it. But best advice I can get is, open to losing. I actually love losing now because I'm like the heel at these damn events. When I lost at Combo Breaker, everyone's cheering for it, and stuff. But being open to losing, communication is definitely key. There's still a lot of shy people out there. And that's one of the reasons I really love putting on Otaku. Is because when I first put it on, a lot of those entrants and attendees had never gone to a CEO or an Evo. They just didn't want to go anywhere. And then they came to that event, and that opened their eyes to the other events with Street Fighter, Tekken, and all that stuff. So that's just something to just always be open and helpful to each other, because it's a crappy world out there, man. If you're stuck on Twitter 24/7, you're going to see arguing every day, yada, yada, all these bad takes. And then you see those people go to an event, hang out with each other, like, man, this is the greatest weekend ever. Like, so just try to get out there safely, obviously. And again, STOs were very understanding that it's still not as easy as it was. And it doesn't help that there's $900 flights cross country now to get to my event, and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, and that gas price is going up too, for people that might be trying to drive in from out of town. Definitely a push.
It's an interesting thing, like when you talk about bad takes, because like one of the things that spurred me towards competing in the first place was I've been playing fighting games since I was 3 years old, but I'm also a game journalist, and there's a stigma about that, about whether or not game journalists are actually any good at games, and that ongoing conversation actually pushed me to be like, I can mix your shiz. And that's what got me out to actually do some locals, move on to actually competing in Evo and other bigger events. And I think one of the biggest things, as far as even myself, overcoming those first nerves when you compete with other people at a live event is something that everybody has to go through, and everybody has to deal with at least once. And I think that there's a lot of techniques out there as to how to do it. For me, breathing techniques are extremely important, because getting knocked out of your zone is that's the fastest track to being out of the tournament in no time, is feeling psyched out of your own comfort zone and not being able to maintain.
Yeah. I was just going to say, honestly, breathing, even I've been playing for years, as much experience as I have, I get nervous. For example, Combo Breaker, I had made top 8 in Mystery, and I really wanted to win that thing, right? And I was even at the match okay, you still got this, you can do it, and then inevitably lost. But the breathing definitely helps, drinking lots of water. I know some people from my earlier days dude, I don't eat the day of a tournament because I want to stay hungry for victory. Probably not a smart thing to do, but
that is terrible.
Yeah, I know. I love to eat, man. So just little things like that to kind of, everyone has their own thing. Try to discover your own thing and get in the zone. But one thing I feel bad is I sit down to somebody who's never been to one of my events, or it's at another event. It's oh my God, I got to play Jebailey. And I just like I just kill him with kindness. Like, dude, it's going to be okay, man. Just relax. I'm going to do this move. Just like, and it totally messes with their minds. So mind games also help to, kind of screw your opponent. But I think what sets the top players apart is those moments of confidence, understanding the matchup, how to like really kind of look and see what you did wrong immediately and fix that. And that's something you can't learn overnight. It's just experience. Now the advice we should have answered the earlier question was so much content out there to get you on top of your game and to understand. Like Street Fighter 4 came out, I was just watching Daigo Rio videos and that was it, right? There wasn't that much else to kind of like look at. Now there's just so much content out there and so many amazing at-home streamers and stuff. So try to pay attention. It is more confusing than ever to find where to get those kind of tips and tricks easily. But communication's key. Just go on Twitter. Every time I ask, like, hey, I need advice on a game or something, you get answered almost immediately because everyone's there to help.
Hashtags, man. There's like whenever a game's balance is adjusted, hashtags for characters are like my go-to thing. You go out there on Twitter, you put in that hashtag, and you go see what other people are doing and what they're discovering, and that has been a really fun way to like discover combo routes, discover what people are finding out as far as strengths and weaknesses. It's as much as Twitter can be the worst, it's also a really good resource.
Yeah, there's a lot of evergreen content there. I mean, there's a big boom between YouTube, Twitter, and just the internet in general. I mean, just my own history. I actually discovered Twitch because of fighting games. Because I originally got into Street Fighter 4, but originally, first off, I was into Marvel vs. Capcom 3. And when that dropped, everything, any kind of new content or, people were discovering things with different characters. I was watching like FGTV House and stuff like that, on stream. I didn't even realize that people were playing other games on Twitch. I just hopped on for fighting games basically and was watching that content before moving on, and then started going to tournaments and stuff like that and seeing, Street Fighter is actually pretty cool too. Maybe I'll start training for both games, and then meeting friends from both ends, and then it started to spread that way. But yeah, it seems like there's been a lot of innovation over time with the way that people kind of approach finding information and finding people that can help train them to get better, and those kind of things, and also calming your nerves and such. But yeah, I wanted to ask you guys a bit about how you approach when it comes to the tournament organizing side. So I know you mentioned like CEO Otaku, and I know you're also a wrestling fan, and I've seen some of the events you put on there. How do you guys find the balance when it comes to adding more to your events to make things more inclusive for people that may be on the cusp or might be involved in some other things? Like I know like there was an awesome cosplay contest recently for Combo Breaker, or you have your artist corner and those kind of things. How do you guys kind of work the line as far as like deciding whether you're going to add something new to the event that may be a bit out of your comfort zone for the things you've run before?
Rick, you may proceed.
For me, it's pretty simple. If I'm getting enough inquiries and communications about a subject to look into it, and that thing celebrates fighting games, I have somebody within my greater circle of trustees that is also interested in whatever that activity is, let's just add it to the show. The entire purpose of most of what I run is celebrating fighting games as a genre and as a fandom. So if we can put it around the tournament and it doesn't take away from the tournament or interfere with the tournament, no reason it shouldn't be on the show.
Yeah, and for me, the wrestling, being a fan all those years, when I got the Daytona venue, I actually had no intentions of any kind of live wrestling show. I just wanted something that was affordable with an arena because I always looked up to Evo and just the excitement that you get with that wide open space and giant screens. The tournament organizing side, it's never perfect, but I feel through advice through, Keats over the years, Rick and all, we kind of perfected the formula on the tournament aspect. My goal always with running tournaments is to make gaming mainstream, right? 10 years ago, if I told somebody I was running fighting game tournaments, a girl, for example, they'd laugh at me, right? Now it's like, that's so cool. My friends are on Twitch all the time and stuff. And the wrestling just kind of fell into my lap, becoming close friends with Kenny Omega, thanks to fighting games and his love for it. And it was just opportunities and scheduling to work with these wrestling companies at the time, pre-COVID. And I'm planning this event. We don't have a live wrestling show. They have something booked in Chicago same weekend. And I'm bored out of my mind, not stressing over taking care of an entire different company. I'm just like, this is kind of easier than ever this year to kind of put things together. And it's a trust thing like Rick said, we have people that want to add to it. But end of the day, our focus is the tournament first and foremost, the competitive integrity, making sure it's as smooth as possible, scheduling, making sure the information is clear to the players to know where they need to be and have it, and then just kind of adding to it, right? Like I started doing the fighting game rumbles every year, and Rick would help me, and we would, the first like 2 years, we would go randomly 20 minutes before, get, hey, I need you in this thing. Hey, I need you in this thing. And then within like the third, fourth year, Tenno's Chris Segley is like, all right, I'm going to organize this shit. We're going to do this right. And it kind of got better and you learn from it. And what makes Combo Breaker special are the mystery tournaments I love entering, the, the auctions they do. CEO is always about the exhibitions and the kind of getting the casual crowd to enjoy what's going on and understand it with the, wrestling side of things. But I wanted to cross worlds, right? And I think we did a pretty damn good job of it over the years. And, just adding little things to kind of make it different. You could add 100 games, but if you don't have something kind of exciting, it won't bring in new eyes to the genre and the events and such. But now we kind of all have a clean slate, right? We're focused on the gaming side of it again, and the attendee experience first and foremost. And then, who knows what happens in the future and bringing in more stuff. But it is a lot different than 10 years ago where developers weren't a part of the planning process. Now we've got all the pro tours and we got to think about that stuff, which at the end of the day, helps us. It brings in more players that are interested in these qualifications and stuff like that. So, but for me, I just like to do cool shit, as I always say, and have fun. And I'm the luckiest guy in the world to have the friends to kind of back me up and connect with a guy like, 10 years ago, if you told me I was going to be butting heads with a billionaire and Tony Khan and AEW and planning out the show and being back, people still message like, how's Kenny doing? Because he's off TV for now and stuff like that. So that was really cool. And again, crossovers, man. We all grew up in the NWO age, and that's kind of what drew it together. And Rick's original CEO wrestling design with the black and white CEO was a game changer for me mentally and how we did the event and such.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. As a Chicago native, yes, there's always some wrestling hype here. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff coming up as well. But you mentioned making fighting games more mainstream. I know there's been a lot of discussion recently and in the past too about both the grassroots side of the FGC, but also focus more on, say, like exhibitions or the idea of certain top players becoming more of a mainstream kind of face or voice moving forward. Where do you guys kind of fall as far as both having the tournament side, but also maybe seeing elements of fighting games kind of moving more in a pop culture direction where it's becoming bigger, like say a exhibition or even like more of some of the esports type of level where there's both television or elements where they're focusing more on the personalities to a certain extent than just the actual game itself. Do you guys think that might be good for the scene, or you think it might run into some trouble?
That's always a part of the scene.
Yeah. Go ahead, Rick.
I think there's an idea, and I don't know entirely where it roots, that personalities or competition or fandom or community cultures are either incompatible or somehow at odds with each other. They're not. You can go back to the roots of fighting games in a lot of ways, and whether it's in the arcade or whether it's people in a basement playing Marvel 2, the people tend to define whatever the experience is. And yes, we are at a point where Tokido can be a flagship marketing person for various brands in Japan. Or Justin Wong can have 37 different sponsors and 14 jobs and be doing 150 online tournaments a year. That is part of the community now, but the things that generate the ability for those to be true are still basic human interactions. As we have more players streaming and putting themselves out there as people, they are finding themselves in more social relationships with the fandom than they would have had access to 20 years ago in an arcade. That hasn't necessarily changed that we still have locals, we still have monthlies, we still have regional tournaments, we still have national and global scale tournaments. There are exhibitions and invitationals that occur alongside those, and I think our ecosystem is healthiest when all of that is present. Capcom Cup and Red Bull Kumite and Combo Breaker and VS Fighting and my local at the pub 15 minutes from this house are all celebrating the same thing from a different perspective. The more perspectives we have to kind of gathered together, the better chance we have of creating an ecosystem that serves every member of the community in the way that they're hoping to be served.
I have nothing to add to that. That was perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, I feel like that was really well said. But
And
yes, I agree with some of that. Yeah.
and like, what a week it has been for fighting games too. Like, let's go ahead and address the elephant in the room. Let's talk about some Street Fighter 6 a little bit, yeah? Like, what's your take on it so far? How do you feel about it so far? We went from clip art logo and some some slightly some good memes to what we have this week, which has been like a full 360 turnaround. And how do you take it in so far?
I mean, leak notwithstanding, it almost feels like the original announcement at this point has to have been a bait and switch meme because there is so much interesting content coming out of Street Fighter 6 so far that looks so responsive to a lot of community asks over the better part of the last decade. This is a game that, early appearances notwithstanding, looks like it's going to launch with a variety of modes and tools and characters and new combat mechanics and classic characters and new characters and a pretty bold new art and visual direction and first player experience. All of that is exciting. I have no idea how it pans out. But I also got a Guile trailer today, so I'm not really going to complain.
What do you think of his beard, Rick?
You know, Guile to me probably should be clean shaven, so I'm looking forward to seeing the alternate outfits, but fan of throwing Sonic Booms, going to be content on that alone for the afternoon.
As you can tell, I'm a huge Street Fighter fan, so I get excited, God, how do I say this? I'm very excited for it, and like Rick said, seeing all the mechanics at once, you feel like they learned from their Street Fighter V mistakes out of the gate, right? And what I've been noticing this week is the artistic style they're going for seems like for battle royales, for example, right? The shooters. When one came out, like PUBG, then you got Fortnite, you got a COD Blackout to start. Like, there's themes that take over in gaming. Kind of, you think everyone's going to start doing it, right? So Street Fighter 6 artistic style. I watched Miss Marvel's first episode. Same kind of graffiti style. Just watch it. It's a really good episode. Graffiti style. Then I just jumped into the new season of Fortnite. Graffiti everywhere, just like that style. So I feel like this is something that we don't know yet that's about to become mainstream pop culture and a more, there's always been graffiti on the streets and the walls and stuff like that, but in a much more gaming side of things. And I like the direction it's going for so far. I can't wait to see more content and obviously play it as a fan. Because if it's like Street Fighter V and I'm not excited about when I first put my hands on it, I'm probably retiring from any new games and just sticking to the old man stuff. Because end of the day, I'm best at Street Fighter. Everything else, I can't learn more new mechanics. I'm getting old. But I think they've got so much content lined up to kind of kick it off. And I, as a tournament organizer, am excited that it's still on PlayStation 4 and we're not forced to switch yet to a new console direction with as big as those damn PS5s are. But I'm glad it's also on Xbox because we need that game to be on as many accessible places as possible to grow the scene. But, end of the day, Street Fighter always kind of changes the game. They were one of the first Pro Tours, and now look at all the Pro Tours we've got. Street Fighter 2 changed the whole genre. So 6, I think they're taking all the best features of every Street Fighter before it, learning from everything they've ever done and putting it together. Just, God, man, if you don't announce rollback in the first trailer, then you're going to make us wonder until it gets announced.
It's stressful, man.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm excited for it. Glad they're showing off characters already. I'm a Guile fan. And now, if according to the leaks, Balrog's not in it, I'll be very sad because he's my main from 4. So we will see. But it seems every even Street Fighter is the best one, even though Third Strike is still one of the better ones. So
yeah, that's true. I mean, I like how you brought up Street Fighter kind of leading the charge, and as far as the both the culture and kind of trending when it comes to other fighting games, because I've been hearing a lot of people saying that this might be kind of like the new like threshold. They're bringing in a new kind of generation for fighting games moving forward, depending on what direction Street Fighter 6 heads here. Do you guys feel like any other games have kind of headed towards that direction as trendy as Street Fighter, as far as like being game changing in that way, or do you think that the energy kind of leaves behind where Street Fighter heads first off?
I'm kind of curious to see their innovations, right? Like Mortal Kombat had Conquest mode, which is now this kind of world tour mode in Street Fighter 6. to kind of see where they go in that direction for the single player, because Street Fighter V had no single player content, right? And to have that 180 into a completely like first play, and I was reading some articles, I won't name the websites, of like, oh no, I hope they don't take away from the fighting game mechanics to make a open world game better, Mortal Kombat, I think, changed the game with the story modes, and that kind of led into Street Fighter V getting a story mode later on. But we got to wait and see, right? Just right now, it looks like a fundamentally solid fighting game from all the early on stuff. It has almost everything from past fighting games to kind of draw in those Street Fighter players. And now, if you're never a Street Fighter fan, this might not draw you in. But goddamn, when a new Street Fighter comes out, everyone plays that game for at least a few months, and whether they stick with it or not, that's up to them. But it always just kind of leads the charge. And I think, looking back over the past couple years, innovation would obviously be the Killer Instinct side of things with how good online fighting games can be. And we kind of hope Street Fighter 6 takes that to the next level, because when that game succeeds online and offline, it helps everyone.
I think game changer in a more direct sense at the moment is, in the past couple of years, we have seen most of the dev pubs directly communicating with one another. And I think we're starting to see more than just crossover characters. We're seeing people producing fighting games that love fighting games, that are learning from and interacting with other people that love fighting games and make fighting games. So I'm very excited about what the next probably 5 years of new releases could look like, because if all of those people are actually engaging with one another on a regular basis and looking to refine what they're doing and experiment with the genre, we could have a lot of really exciting games coming out. And we just already got one with Strive and what that has managed to do in the community. Strive right now, and Guilty Gear as a franchise, has got to be at the best position point it has been in since the franchise started.
I wholeheartedly believe that when Strive came out, it put everybody on notice to do better, like in a way that like we hadn't seen before. Because now, ever since Strive came out, the first question on everyone's mind when a new trailer launches is, what's the netcode? And it is a big part of that is that Strive's netcode is so damn good. There is no desire to go back. There is no desire to go back to bad, janky, delay-based netcode.
Well, the nice part, though, is even for games that had weaker netcode, we're seeing modern netcode retrofitted and put back into it.
Mm-hmm.
Just look at BlazBlue at the moment and what's happening with that title again. Central Fiction was one of the largest tournaments we hosted last month. That would not have been the case without some of the enthusiasm around that game becoming more playable again outside of emulators. So I think that approach to retro games, some of the things that are going into current titles and hopefully upcoming titles, are going to lead us to having quite frankly, a wealth of fighting games to play, and hopefully all of them are good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One thing Guilty Gear would be perfect is, I like the direction of those lobby systems. I just don't like the execution of them. I just want to get on, put in a ranked match, and get right in, So, but to see Guilty Gear it's currently the #1 game at my event for registration, and we're ending on Monday for registration for CEO. And to see it the biggest game at Combo Breaker, it just shows the testament that these developers did it right. Not many complaints. You don't see people arguing over much about the game itself. They're just playing the damn game, and that's what we want as TOs. Just shut up, play the game, help each other get better, and end of the day, just support what developers are doing right. And so far, they've done everything right. Every trailer's been super hype. I was honored to show off the biking trailer at the end of CEO, and to see that they understand the community is what makes these games even more hype. To kind of support events with those kind of announcements goes a long way for both the organizers and enjoying putting on these games, and the players themselves to get excited.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Guilty Gear has definitely made strides. Yes, I hit that pun. But yes, it's pretty awesome to see. I think that the community is definitely thriving right now. Now, as far as like we talked a bit about the history of both scenes for you guys, and also fighting games in general. But when it comes to kind of balancing things as far as like between your personal lives and work lives, for those that might be looking into, maybe starting something up in their local scene, or, maybe branching out a bit more from just, hosting some games online and such, how do you guys kind of balance out both sides for people that, may be interested in kind of taking that leap a bit into doing some organizing themselves. How do you guys feel about that?
I've been trying to find a balance for over 10 years, so if somebody figures it out, let me know.
Could you please repeat the question? I got a very important CEO email.
Oh no, you're fine. I was asking, how do you guys balance out kind of more of your personal lives from your work life?
You're funny.
Tournament organizers?
Personal, dude. I don't know how Rick effing does it, man, with a kid now and all that. Like, being single helps in my situation. I love what I do, but I've actually, because of COVID, got a dog, right? Like, kind of focused more on my side. End of the day, I'll find time to game because I'm a gamer at heart. I just, over COVID, I ended up playing way too many BRs with Kenny and kind of switching over to that over fighting games. But I enjoy streaming. I do personally stream on my channel. It has been inconsistent with event travel and stuff, but we love what we do at the end of the day. Yes, we would love to be at a point where we're not trying to get rich off of it. We want to comfortably put on these events and go, all right, every year I have everything I need. I don't have to worry about finances to the very last second of registration. And, whatever happens after that is great because we're fortunate enough to get jobs in what we love doing and putting on these events. But to find balance, like people ask me that all the time, like, dude, how are you going to the gym? It's just focus on yourself. Your health is the most important thing, man. And if you don't take time for yourself, it's going to affect everything else, right? I love working out because I did hang out with wrestlers for a few years, and it kind of got me in that mindset of this is how they kind of stay sane outside of being on TV and stuff. And that's kind of like your Zen space, right? So I always tell people, find what makes you happy, where you can disconnect the best you can. That way, when you're back into what you need to be doing, you're kind of more mentally prepared. And I got to say, over the last couple of years, not just COVID, but a lot of players, man, have like put in a lot of effort at the gyms and showing their gains. And it's inspiring a lot. Like I look at Rob TV, I think about him when I'm at the gym. Like, all right, buddy. Yeah. All right, buddy. You might be 10 years younger, but I can still outbench you. No, so that kind of inspiration, I think, helps. There's a lot more resources in the support system. And the good thing about the FGC is we cast out the bad as quickly as possible, which kind of helps to make us feel a lot better and be more supportive of each other. So, just balance. But, for me, the biggest challenge was when I was doing CEO in the early days, working a full-time job with the family business that had nothing to do with gaming, and then taking that leap of faith to focus on events full-time and start off with a dream job with Killer Instinct and Iron Galaxy, and then now do events full-time, right? So you just kind of learn to make the most of your time planning things out, getting more organized, and kind of delegating. You have to delegate in this industry, otherwise you're going to fail. And it's just do it. At the end of the day, you got to do what makes you happy, because when you're happy, everyone else around you will kind of feel that, and it'll help everything be better. And plus, when Rick puts on a good event, it motivates me to lose more sleep and then put on a better event. So thanks, Rick.
Some healthy competition, man.
Yeah. No, we're nothing but love, honestly, and it's just special to look back 10 years and like when I go through some old pictures, Esteban's working on a CEO documentary, and I'm picking up and I'm just like looking at me and Rick, so young and happy and not naive about how hell this could be if I had the seats to kind of see it now to where we're well respected enough, have just so many amazing people helping us out. And it's just such a good feeling kind of taking that all in and realizing that this is what we're probably going to be doing for the next 10 to 15 years.
I ain't doing this for 15 more years. Are you nuts?
I said I'd quit. I'll be 40, and you know where I'm spending my 40th birthday, guys? At the Pokemon World Championships.
Oh, nice.
So, what? I'll do it as long as I can. But yeah, you know what I mean. So we would love to sell off our companies to Sony. Buy them, please, so we can get out. I'm kidding.
Well, speaking of making it through these last couple of years, like the everything that's gone on, obviously, with the pandemic, and as we've mentioned previously, like the increase in prices, like, do you feel like there's any lessons that you learned over these last couple of years with this pandemic that we kind of can't go, like, you can't, in certain ways, is there anything that you feel we can't go back to the way it was before that happened? And then furthermore, how do we take what we have now and continue to make the FGC a better and bigger place?
I think the hardship or the most interesting thing of the past is you can never go back to it. So how do we take the nostalgia of what we had, combine it with the realities of where we are today, and mix that up into something that we are excited to see at the end of where we're going? I don't have any individual lessons that come out of the last 2 years. I think most of the last 2 years is incredibly personal for everybody that's gone through it in that regard. Experiences are too different. What I do know, at least from a practical experience thus far, is as we try to return back to kind of fighting games as both a community and a culture, no one is in the same place they were 2 years ago in almost any way. And so whether it's rust for organizers and staff at events, whether it's players that have adjusted what they're playing or how they're playing, whether it is relationships that have changed in both positive and negative ways, treat everything as fresh, because we actually have an opportunity to take where we were and time skip it. That's not probably, hopefully, going to come up in our lives again. And so if you can wrap your brain around where you are now from a different perspective, do so. Because we have a great opportunity to figure out what we can be moving forward that doesn't necessarily have to be what we were.
A great man once said, "You aren't born just to pay bills and die. Do something with your time to enjoy your time, because time is limited." TheHadou, circa February 27, 2016. Anyways, but I mean, to that point,
10 years. When are you going to say that name right?
TheHadou, whatever. Anyways, TheHadou. So my point is that, like he said, it's, things are in the past. You kind of have to move forward. And I was in denial for the first 6 months of COVID. Like, dude, are we losing our events forever? That kind of situation, to go from what you're doing and just moving forward. We've learned so much over the last 10 years, but now we know that there's other people that can fill the roles that we need more than ever. Because the early days, we thought we were the only ones that could do what we're doing, right? And now there's just so many people willing to learn and come to events and just get advice and stuff like that. So, it's just going forward, we know what we have to do to run these good events and kind of stick through all the good and bad at the same time without forgetting about where we kind of came from, but how now we have more resources than ever to put on the best things we can.
Nice. Well, I have, we're hitting towards the top of the hour here, but I did have one question I want to ask you guys that's more, less on the community side and more on the developer side. If you guys had the opportunity to basically speak with developers or to have a request for developers for your events, you could ask for anything you wanted, and it might be guaranteed. What would you guys ask for from the developer side, as far as that relationship for future events?
That one's easy. Give me a new Killer Instinct.
Okay,
could you repeat the question one more time?
No, it's fine.
I have 10 deadlines tonight, so sorry. Continue.
Oh no, you're fine.
Yeah.
So I was asking, as far as the developer end goes, if you had the opportunity to pretty much, make a request or ask for anything, and high chance of it being guaranteed from a developer, what would you ask for your events specifically?
I asked Keats to put me in dive kick, and now I'm in dive kick. Events specifically, just the ease of access to quicker rematches, button checking, and they've actually. It's funny, right? A lot of people don't realize Tekken had a patent on the recent thing that's the animations from Soul Calibur 2, right? And everyone thought it was the first time it ever happened. But then they forgot it was in Soul Calibur 2, and then it was because there was a patent that they had. Virtual Fighter 4 had a patent on their amazing training system, right? So I'd like a world where each new game kind of brings back some of the best features, because I would love to sit down with the developer and go, all right, we need this proper button check so they don't have to go into the end game, and they've done that, right? Scoreboards, it would be so amazing if they had a way to turn on a scoreboard within the game of first to 3. Some games I believe have done that. I can't think of one exactly. You'll have the win system, right? But you'll never have this set is 3 out of 5, unless you're online, right? But little things like that for the offline experience to just make it, they sit down, they put in their controller, bam, 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 controller's done, and then they kind of go into it. But I think over the years they've kind of added, and that's a question I thought to myself recently. I'm trying to remember what answer I came up with, to have a system where I think Mortal Kombat did it best with, and Killer Instinct did it best with the TheHadou Jebailey fund. They need to bring that back, and it could be a legal issue, but DLC where it specifically goes into events prize pool to kind of help out or pays for an entire developer tour. Microsoft was super helpful to us with the TheHadou Jebailey fund and pro tours and all, but I would like to see more of that, to pull a page out of the Epic, the Epic creator code, where you get a bunch of content for free included. So I hope they do that with this single player world in Street Fighter 6. But I think rollback is a necessity now that we're asking the community's asking every developer. I've seen some games released recently and they're dead on arrival without any net code, rollback to kind of bring it forth. So I think developers have gotten a grasp on what we do need. But in terms of, new things, it's just making it easier for tournaments to kind of run and have the settings there so we don't have to like pay attention to the screen 24/7, things like that.
I think Dota 2 is the best example of what you're talking about. Every year they use the season pass as a direct fund for the Dota International Championship, and I think that's genius. I think that's a good way to go about it, is to tie esports to some product that people actually want to buy in the game. Dota is one of the biggest prize pools in the world when it comes to esports, and I think that a lot of other esports could learn from that.
So I've got time for one more. We got a closing question, or shall I bid you all adieu for the evening?
Oh, I was just gonna give you guys opportunity to plug stuff, as we wrap up here, because you gave us the time here, so we'd like to make sure that for people that might be interested in getting involved in things moving forward here with what you all have got going on, if you wanted to maybe give a plug out to what you guys have coming up here, or at least get some people who may have been watching this and maybe taking a leap into moving towards going to tournaments here.
I'll go. This video will probably air after CO player reg closes, so I can't plug that. But tune into every event you can, when you can, whether you just leave the screen on or whatever, because those numbers help our bottom line. But to just be supportive of your community, give me a follow at Jebailey as always to put out the news for you and stuff. But as soon as you feel comfortable, try to attend events again, because as you were seeing with people's experiences at CO in December and Combo Breaker, how happy people are to be back with each other and around each other and get us out of that 2-year rut that we've kind of been in. So end of the day, we love your support in any way, whether you're just watching the stream or you're sending out I enjoyed that match online or anything like that, is always helpful to us as organizers.
On my end, we just got done with Combo Breaker. You can check it out at combobreaker.org. We have Evo coming up. You can check out Evo at evo.gg. But before you do either of those things, please go check out supercombo.gg. Find a game you like, learn to play it. We'll see you offline.
Man, awesome. Well, thank you both for joining us for this panel. We are extremely happy to have you here. And you gave some awesome advice. I'm hoping that we'll see some newcomers joining the scene and checking out all the amazing events that you guys have been putting on for countless years here. And I just want to personally just say thank you for all the work that you all do. I know it is definitely a whole lot throughout the year, but we definitely appreciate you. So thank you for being on with us both.
Thank you. And for more on Shacknews, tune into IG. No, I'm just kidding.
Thank you guys.
All right, thank you.
All right, we are